Well, welcome to this video screencast of an analysis of Dulce et Decorum Est, one of the three poems set down for course study within the Year 9 unit Representations in War. Alright, well, let's get started. Now, any analysis of this poem particularly needs to begin with a reference to Owen's varying of his use of person within the poem, from third to second to first, back to second. And so as we go through the poem, we'll deal with where he does this and why he does it, along with identifying as many other features as we can. All right, let's get started. Now, this first stanza sets the scene for the poem and gives us lots of description, and it's also a bit of a storytell of what's happening at this particular moment. So the first two lines, we'll just pick up on those and highlight them. And it gives us a sense of what has happened to a group of soldiers after spending a reasonable amount of time on the front lines in sometime in World War I, late in World War I would think. And we'll just read the lines. Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we curse through sludge. These are young, healthy soldiers who have, after spending some time at the front, have emerged looking like old beggars and old hags. The two similes there. They're bent double, they can't even stand up straight. Such has been the trauma of the experience. We get a sense of just how horrible that experience must have been. And Owen continues on and with these two lines here, and he says, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. And this gives us a sense of what's actually happening here. These are men who are returning from the front line to the rest areas at the back of the trenches, often many miles away. They would have to walk to the relieved zones. And they're sort of finally turning their backs on the experience of being right in the front line. The haunting flares, these are the flares that would light up the night sky across no man's land during World War I. And it would enable people to see what was going on at night time in no man's land. And indeed, those flares were quite haunting. If ever you've seen some pictures of them. Now, he continues on with this specific description of what the men were like and how the experience had dehumanised them. Men marched to sleep, so they were exhausted. Many had lost their boots but limped on bloodshot. The fact that some of these guys had lost their boots and hadn't been resupplied. They'd been forced to go bootless and have to walk back to the rest areas without shoes. So they're not getting a lot of support from those behind them. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue. Now these are or drunk with fatigue is certainly a metaphor. Bloodshot's a metaphor, but all went lame, all blind, probably an exaggeration, but to the same degree, for the same reason, in that Owen's trying to give us a sense of just how traumatic the experience has been. So traumatic that these guys, in the relief of heading for home, they're deaf to the falling of shells around them, deaf even to the hoots of tide outstripped 5.9s that drop behind them. Now 5.9s are 5.9-inch shells, which the Germans used to deliver gas across the lines. That were their favoured method of later in the war of deploying gas against the enemy. Now these guys, because they're heading for home, they've put the whole front behind them. So on hearing these old guns shooting, they pretty much ignored them, thinking that it's not really going to bother them. But all of a sudden it does bother them because these shells are carrying gas. And so Owen moves from this slow description of these traumatised young men to this incredibly fast-paced imperative of getting their gas masks on. So we get the two one-word sentences, gas, gas, and we get the gas, the second gas in capital letters to show how urgent it is. Quick, boys. So he's actually speaking to the soldiers around him. Now, if we take this person to be Owen himself, and he was an officer, so you get a sense that he was probably giving orders. Quick, boys, get your gas masks on. And ecstasy of foaming. Now, the choice of the word ecstasy here is an interesting choice of word to explain this incredible adrenaline rush, passionate movement of getting this gas mask on, and the feeling of enormous relief once it was on, that you finally were safe from this terror of the gas around you. So that this line here certainly is a change of pace within the poem. Then we get back to third person again. We go from second person here back to third person, where he's back to the description of what's happening. Fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Now, so someone obviously hasn't got their gas mask on in time, and they're yelling as though they were being burnt alive, floundering about, yelling, stumbling. Here's someone who has basically got a lung full of gas, and this is the effect on them. And then Owen changes from this fire image, or lime is another way of suggesting a burning type of substance, to looking at the scene through his gas mask, and we get this sense of being underwater. And he uses the word green here twice, and we'll just look at this two lines. Dim through the misty panes, and thick green light as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. So what he's seeing through his gas mask is a green world. Green, why? Because the gas was probably chlorine gas, which actually did have a green colour to it. And this guy looked like he was actually under the sea drowning through these round holes on his gas mask. Now, he wasn't drowning, so obviously it's a metaphor, but it achieves a very powerful effect of what it would have been like to see this man suffer. And then he moves to first person here, and he gives us a sense of how this experience has affected him. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. We have this cluster of three here. In the present tense, present continuous, with guttering, choking, drowning. And he gives us a real insight into how this horrible experience has been impressed on his mind, and comes back to him at night time when he's asleep. And then the poem jumps back to second person, but he doesn't speak to those soldiers around him, speaking to certain individuals back in England. And the aim here is to call them out as hypocrites and saying, look, you are the people who are promoting recruitment at home. You are the people that are telling young boys that it is brave and honourable and glorious to head off to war and die for your country. And he gives it a really horrific description of this man slowly dying as they walk back to their rest area. And he basically says to those individuals back in England, if you could see with this, as I'm seeing this, there's no way you would say what you are saying. And he calls them out for the hypocrisy in which they live. So let's go through it. And this whole stanza here is second person, speaking directly to them. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, so if you could dream this as well as me, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin. Great simile, like a devil sick of sin. And this man, he doesn't look like a human anymore, he actually looks like a devil. And he's used this amazing metaphor of vomiting sin. It's like this evil coming out of his mouth. Quite a dark way to look at this guy's last few minutes of life. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. A quite astounding description of just how horrible the experience is to view this guy and what's happened to him and the way he's died. And then he uses this really deep irony here, my friend, as though he knows these people, like he knows them, and he's using this sort of ironic greeting to them. My friend, because obviously these people are not his friends. You would not tell with such high zest. And we're down here, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie. So the old lie is this notion of that it's glorious to die for your country. So he really does call these people out as child killers, telling them lies to send them off to their deaths. Quite an astonishing accusation. And the lie is Dulce et Decorum Est per patria mora, which is a reasonably well-known saying and appears in coats of arms and various things like that in various organisations around the world. And it means it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country, or it is sweet and meet to die for one's country. And Owen challenges this, and he says, there's no way anyone who actually experiences war can represent war in this way. And in so doing, he represents war as he has seen it. And he has great integrity because he lived it and ultimately died there on the Western Front. All right, so this is what the poem's about. Hopefully this short analysis will be useful to you in answering the questions. Good luck.